What if the you defend every day wasn't really yours? What if your personality were, to a large extent, a silent contract with the world? Think about this. When you're alone, with no one watching, are you still the same person you are when you're with others? Because that's where the problem begins. Not the problem of living, but the problem of believing yourself. There's a version of you that smiles when it's expected, that says what's convenient, that swallows what hurts, that adapts so well that one day it wakes up and doesn't know why it's tired. And the worst part isn't the tiredness. The worst part is that you normalize it. You tell yourself, I'm just like this, as if that closed the story. But the story isn't closed. It's been edited. Most people don't know themselves. They get used to themselves. And that habit has a shape, a social identity, a mask polished by years of approval. It's not a lie, it's a selection. The mask chooses what to show so you don't lose your place in the tribe. The problem begins when that mask starts giving orders to you. When you're no longer wearing it, when you are it. Then any crisis feels like a personal attack, because you're not defending your life. You're defending your character. And here comes the uncomfortable question. What's left when the character stops working? Because sometimes life tears up your script. A failure, a breakup, a job change, a loss, a decision that forces you to look without filters. And suddenly you catch yourself reacting in ways that don't fit the image you have of yourself. You say something cutting and it shocks you, and you sabotage yourself right when things were going well. You repeat the same pattern even though you swore you wouldn't this time. And then one thought scares you. There's something in me I can't control. That feeling isn't random. It's the unrecognized part of you asking to come in. Inside you there isn't just one voice. There are several. Some want security. Others want adventure. Some want to please. Others want to scream, enough. And while you try to look coherent, inside you negotiate with yourself as if you were a country in a Cold War. That's why so many decisions feel like betrayal. The price of choosing one part of you is leaving another part, gasping for air. And if you leave it without air for too long, that part doesn't disappear. It gets buried. And from down there it rules in secret. You can call that the shadow, but don't imagine it as evil. The shadow isn't a monster, it's a storage room. That's where you keep what you were told was too much, too sensitive, too intense, too ambitious, too weak, too weird. You also store what scared you to accept. Envy, rage, desire, ego, the need for control, the hunger for recognition. And yes, positive things too. Talents you didn't dare use, intuitions you silenced, desires that weren't proper. The shadow is what you kept pushing into the basement so you could remain loved upstairs. And the shadow has a trick. It doesn't ask permission. When you don't look at it, it expresses itself through the back door. It comes out as impulses, in bursts of anger, in sarcasm, in compulsions, in relationships that repeat with the same ending, in that, I don't know what came over me that shows up after you explode. You call it a mistake. It calls it an opportunity. Now comes one of the most dangerous and most useful keys to knowing yourself. What irritates you most in others can be a mirror. Not always, but often. Do arrogant people get under your skin? Sometimes it's because you also want to feel big, and you forbid yourself. Does someone who's too free unsettle you? Maybe they remind you of your own imprisonment. Does other people's weakness make you furious? Maybe it's your denied fragility demanding respect. Your mind thinks it hates that person. but often it hates the permission that person is giving themselves, or the truth they're showing you. And that's where self-knowledge stops being pretty. Because knowing yourself isn't making a list of virtues. Knowing yourself is negotiating with what you didn't want to admit. And that's why so many people prefer distraction. Routine, noise, productivity, entertainment, relationships with no silence. Not because those things are bad, but because silence has a property. It gives back the echo of what you avoid. And there's a part of you that knows that if you stay still, you're going to hear things. And still, knowing your inner world doesn't mean becoming a person trapped in their head. In fact, here's the most common mistake: confusing understanding with transformation. You can understand yourself and stay the same. You can analyze your childhood and repeat the exact pattern. You can give your wounds sophisticated names and keep living as if nothing happened. Awareness is a flashlight. It's not the path. The flashlight only matters if you get up and walk. So how do you walk? Start with a simple, a brutally honest observation. Watch your reactions, not your speeches, your reactions. What you do when no one applauds you, how you respond when you're frustrated, what you choose when you're afraid, what you postpone for weeks, what you promise and don't follow through on. Your everyday life is your psychological biography. You don't need more theory. You need to see the pattern and accept that the pattern belongs to you. And here another piece comes in. Inside your mind, different tools are operating, as if you had a control panel. Some people live from logic and sacrifice emotion until one day their body blows up. Some people live from emotion, and when you ask them for structure, they feel like you're turning them off. Some cling to the present, to the concrete, and get impatient with abstract ideas. And then others live scanning possibilities, connecting invisible dots, and that's why they neglect practical reality. It's not that one way is superior. It's that when one dominates and the others remain in the shadow, you become partial. And living partial hurts. What's interesting is that your weakest part often shows up under stress. When you're at the edge, you become someone you don't recognize. The rational one becomes emotional and overwhelmed. The sensitive one turns cold. The practical one gets lost. The visionary one freezes. And that doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're unbalanced. It means there are capacities you're not training. And your system tries to compensate however it can. The real goal isn't to improve yourself as if you were a product. The goal is to integrate yourself, to be more whole. Because integrating doesn't mean becoming perfect. It means becoming responsible for your totality. And responsibility isn't blame. It's ownership. This is also me. This also lives in me. This also influences me. And if I don't look at it, I act it out blindly. At some point on the path, an uncomfortable truth appears. Part of you benefits from staying the same. Yes, even if you suffer. Because some kinds of suffering come with hidden profits. Victimhood can spare you decisions. Perfectionism can protect you from failure. Fear of rejection can justify inaction. Chaos can keep you from measuring yourself seriously. And when you discover the payoff, the pattern shakes. Because it's no longer fate. It's an unconscious strategy. And here comes the philosophical turn. There is no final version of you. There isn't a day when you finish, and that's it. Identity is a process, not a statue. What you are today isn't what you'll be in 5 years. And if you force yourself to stay the same, you become your own prison. Self-knowledge isn't finding a label. It's holding an ongoing conversation with your change. But there's a line that separates introspection from real life, and that line is called action. Because in the end, the question isn't who am I, but what do I do with what I am? What boundary do you need to set? What habit do you need to break? What truth do you need to say? What relationship are you maintaining out of fear? What part of yourself are you bargaining away so you'll be accepted? Self-knowledge matters when it turns into visible decisions. And yes, this is scary. Well, because changing your life means losing an old identity. And the ego hates losing, even if that identity is killing you from the inside. The familiar pain is more comfortable than the emptiness of the new. That's why so many people don't change. Not because they can't, but because they haven't yet paid the price of staying the same. Now hear this calmly. You're not here to fit in. You're here to be whole. Not whole as in good, but whole as in complete, with light and shadow, with contradictions and meaning, with discipline and desire, with fear and courage. The world pushes you to look certain, to have answers, to act as if you've got it all figured out. But the truth is, nobody has it all figured out. Everyone is improvising with wounds and hopes. And maybe, just maybe, the greatest act of courage isn't being strong. It's looking at yourself without makeup, admitting what you avoid, recognizing what you project, accepting what you repress, and acting in a new way even if your body shakes. Because when you do that, you don't become someone different. You become someone more yours. So I'll leave you with a question, not to think about prettily, but to answer with facts. If your masks fell today, which part of you would appear first? And most important, are you going to run from it again? Or are you finally going to sit down and listen? If you've made it this far, comment, "I've arrived," and I'll personally reply. And if you resonated with me, subscribe to become a member and like if you enjoyed it.